Sonic and Knuckles book. Ooh, I like that the emerald in this cover doesn't look like it does in the game, because that's unique. Not better, but still good. It starts out boringly with Sonic on patrol around the Great Forests again, which would be a waste of time if Knuckles underground like it should be. The story wastes my time recapping the premise of Sad AM when it's not likely someone who's reading this would be unaware of its existence, and it ends up pointless. The cover this time gave no hint that it'd be a Sad AM inspired story. But all you have to establish that is show the Sad AM characters. We're not stupid. That was tremendously boring. Sonic feels dizzy and leans against a tree. I guess it makes sense that he could only be immune to dizziness while he's spinning himself on purpose, because magic is weird. Could be weirdly specific programming of magic. He confusingly blames the chili dog overeating he did and sees a green glow around him and assumes it's a hallucination because of it. Somehow. He somehow sees a vision of Angel Island and Knuckles. He cheerfully greets him but doesn't hear him. It's sweet that he has such a good first impression because of this. He calls Knuckles cool and buddy and says he's almost as fast as him. For once, a writer of another continuity acknowledges this. Then he has a vision of Eggman and calls him outnumbered, and sees a huge beam shooter appear in his hands that has no effect on Sonic. I can't take any of this seriously because there's no reason for him to have these visions. At least this never happened before though, so I'm engaged. But this adaptation is lame already. He sees his friends all get shot by the beams, and gets a vision of a group of green glowing stones. I wouldn't expect Sonic to admit that jewels are beautiful, but it is nice that he's appreciating them. Then the story gets really boring by wasting time reiterating the backstory of Eggman's fortress and taking an insultingly long time to give us exposition. Eggman says some things are back in his dimension, and there's a ripoff of the Who's on First joke because he says what, which would never be in Sad AM. And that's only an insult because I find this boring. He was talking about the Chaos Emeralds. Somehow, Snively didn't know about them when Eggman does, even though they're both from the same place. He says the emeralds live in a dimension occupying the same space as Mobius, and of course he doesn't explain why they ever appear in it, because that would be filling in a plot hole in the important continuity. It's impossible to know when they'll appear on a floating island that moves back and forth between dimensions. So Angel Island's in the special zone usually. That would have been a really good idea to call to have. So that's something new. But it means that Knuckles only needs to be a guardian if there's people living near where he is. It already makes him useless most of the time that nobody lives on his island. But it means he'd have nothing to worry about if he wasn't guarding the Master Emerald. So if it was like this in the games, there'd really be no problem with him not guarding the Emerald and hanging out with Sonic. Eggman can feel the emeralds because it's attuned to his energy. It never explains why, so this is stupid. But at least it's something that never happened before. He says they can alter the future. I already assumed what he wanted to do with them, so he doesn't need to waste my time explaining it. Every single scene with just these two is padding. He's not entertaining. Sonic conveniently wakes up in bed. Why does the story reiterate what Sally's position is? It never even matters to the plot that she is the princess. It's easy to assume that he follows her plans because he thinks they're good ideas. If anything, it's better not to explain that she's royalty, because some people have made a mountain out of molehill about it, saying he's obeying authority and should never do that, even though it's functionally no different than him following Tails' plan in SA2, and no one bitched about that. So him following her ideas would be fine if she wasn't a princess and he was the official leader? Somehow, Sonic wonders how he got back to Knothole. Tails wants to see him and asks if he's okay, and it turns out he got to be the one to take him home. He says he was following him when he went on patrol, but he was always a little behind him. At least the writer knows he's fast, and knows his place. But the pacing is terrible in this story. I hate that Tails thinks he has to say he hopes he's not mad at him for following him. Sonic says he isn't mad at him and calls him buddy, but condescends to him that he doesn't think it's a great idea for a guy who can fly to follow him on patrol. Bunny shows up, and it wastes time recapping what she is, too. Why does the narration reiterate that Rotor's an inventor? We'll find that out anyways if he's not a worthless character in this book. Unlike in Sad AM, the narration says his gadgets had saved the heroes many times. Antoine says Sally was worried about Sonic, and the narration wastes time reiterating what he is. Sonic says he's okay and thanks Tails and tells them everything. Fortunately, they believe him, though for all I know, it was only because Sally already knew about the Legend of the Chaos Emeralds. Why does she need to tell Sonic about them? We don't need to be given the same exposition twice. She says they can affect things at random all of a sudden, and almost anything can happen when they're near. That can only lead to convenience-led writing. I'm sure it won't result in a bunch of wacky and acid trip-worthy things happening, like an elephant showing up, and flying, and pink dust everywhere, so I say this. She says all good could be wiped out because of them. Sally says Sonic only saw a possible future. The legend, which she never explains why she knows, says that if heroes get the stones, all evil in Mobius could be eliminated. But I guess that won't happen because it would end the Sad AM Books continuity, so thanks a lot for spoiling that the heroes won't get all of the emeralds. And the idea of all evil being eliminated on the planet reminds me of Eggman's origin story, which was originally gonna be in Sad AM. Why didn't they go with that? I read about what could have been, and a lot of it was really good. Sonic says happily that they could get rid of Eggman with the emeralds. Why does he say this? How is he so stupid as to think that he couldn't have done it alone with his speed? It's easier to believe the heroes have a no-killer rule considering that and Eggman's base having a set known location on the planet. This is why its base should never be like that. It should either be the Death Egg that's constantly on the move or on a satellite. The point is, why would Sonic be okay with using emeralds to kill Eggman just because of the method? When he's presumably not going to be in the Eggmobile at the time, so that would be breaking the rule. That he's supposed to attack him when he's not in the Eggmobile. He should have said, by getting rid of all of the evil in the world, it would turn Eggman good. Then I wouldn't be asking why he's such a hypocrite here. Then the story resorts to more boring padding by switching to Eggman's point of view for no reason. Eggman tells Snively to hold down the fortress and chuckles because that was his idea of a joke when he literally is telling him to hold down the fort. So what's funny about that? It's convenient that he's even portraying the style of Eggman as being willing to chuckle at his own joke. That's oddly likable. The scene blatantly wastes my time being worthless after this. Eggman had left with the robot army because the emeralds were so important that he thought he had to lead the mission himself. His inner emerald radar tells him exactly where to go to see Angel Island. He lampshades that it picked a perfect time, and he and the robots get tractor beamed to the island for no apparent reason. That's insultingly forced. At least this is the first time this ever happened in the series. The tractor beam sounds cool. He sees a figure moving very quickly and puts on a fake pleasant act wanting to discuss jewels with him. He should have said more than just that, because he had no reason to think that would help him. Knuckles rams into him and destroys 3 of his robots. Already this was done wrong by having Knuckles get a chance to start attacking before Eggman could get his lie in. While this is a realistic and respectful of Knuckles' outcome, it now makes no sense that he's gonna get to trick him. Logically, he would kill him right now without giving him a chance to explain because you know a thief would say anything to save himself here. In the illustration of it, Knuckles is smirking inexplicably, and his arms barely raised as he punches him in his weak spot. I assumed he did a glide into him instead. The flash of light censors any impact his head would have had against him. If Eggman had a way to fire lasers himself, like he could in Archie, he would have simply killed Knuckles here. He had no reason to think he'd need Knuckles, or that using him would be the better way than the way he always goes by. You could just not have Knuckles be face to face with Eggman in the first place. Have him meet a camera with a screen with Eggman on it, so it still could have written this properly. Eggman tries to make himself look good by telling his robots to cease fire, but realistically, this would have just been his undoing. It sure is convenient that Knuckles wastes time like a shitty guardian explaining why he's bothering him. This should have been gone over in his training. Knuckles not only lets him get out what any thief would say to save himself, he even tells him his name for no reason. Knuckles gets told he's the good King Robotnik who's kind and caring. He would have not believed him because a real good person wouldn't brag about that. And because he has black and red eyes. So he should have asked him about that, and gotten told that he had no control over what the new eyes his doctor gave him looked like and no way to change their looks. And even then, he would be instinctively compelled to think of him as evil for them because that's just how people think. When you grow up not having any companionship, you don't get to learn to trust anyone. Trust is something you learn. Knuckles didn't even know the name of Mobius. Eggman would know what Knuckles does here because he just told him. Knuckles would wonder why he said that. This is a waste of time. Eggman lies that he wants to share the power of the Emerald with him to make sure no harm would ever come to the Mobians. Knuckles is skeptical because he travels with an army of metal soldiers, even though even a good king would do that for the sake of protecting himself just in case. He'd already have assumed that. The Swampots used to be an army to protect the king. Eggman tells him that Sonic's the evil one that he has these robots to protect him from. I get the reason why Knuckles doesn't kill him immediately just in case. He doesn't want to risk making a mistake just in case he isn't lying. It still should have explained that Knuckles doesn't believe him, and is only keeping him around just in case, trying to test his character. Sonic 3 not explaining that is the whole reason Knuckles got betrayed as an idiot later on. When sure he was stupid for not killing him, but it wasn't because he's stupid that he spared him. But he was stupid for letting him talk. He should have knocked him out and tied him up at least. If he was the type to instantly start attacking an intruder, it'd be because he had already made up his mind about him. And he would have been trained to always assume the worst and nothing but the worst. You'd think that he'd be specifically taught to not keep a thief around. He would have destroyed his other robots just in case, saying he doesn't need them anyways. He also would have demanded to visit his kingdom separate from him to see if he's really a good ruler first, while keeping him trapped in a room. All he'd have to do is know for sure. He has no reason to just take his word for it. I hate that Tails is written to get told he can't go with Sonic. Sonic Underground later on is already a Sonic 3 adaptation where Tails isn't in it. So this doesn't even have novelty value for me, even though I think it is the first time this ever happened. It's not like Tails really does much in that game anyways, so you don't really notice a difference in this story. You'd think at some point Tails would point out that he can fly really high, so he wouldn't ever be in danger anyways. Sonic says he's gonna go on a very dangerous adventure because he doesn't know what those stones could do. Then it should be explained that the reason they're sending Sonic there and not a robot that could be sent to his death no problem is that they assume Eggman's there. Tails for once is justified in being worried about Sonic because of what he just said about the Emeralds. He calls Tails pal. It seems like overcompensating that he calls him pal and buddy more than anybody else when he spends the least amount of time with him and really his only interaction with him is saying to stay home because he's worthless. I hate how rude and bossy Antoine is to Sonic. Better him than Sally. Sonic, Antoine, and Rotor help pack up supplies as Sally studies a map of the forest. They shouldn't think they need supplies. Sonic is fast. Really, Sonic doesn't even need them to slow him down. He should just go to the island and run all around it and find the emeralds in seconds. At least in Robotropolis it could be explained that he never knows when he'd need Bunny's super strength, or Nicole's hacking power. But even then he could just run back home and go get them in seconds. What does Sally think his friends could possibly accomplish that he would need that would make up for that. Sure, they could save him a little bit of time searching if they all search in different places. That didn't happen last time. She should say that. She bores me giving exposition that Eggman already did about the emeralds. So Bunny and Sally both have the idea to start their search where Sonic had its vision. Tails wishes them good luck, and Sonic calls him Bud, and Antoine just has to be written to be rude to Sonic again. Why in the hell are they written to just walk through the woods for several hours when even the previous books established that Sonic can have them form a chain with one holding him and he could just run to his destination in seconds with them? Idiots! It wasted my time because of this. Why the hell is Sonic the only one who was sent to the island? I thought these people were going to justify being in the story by this being the first Sonic 3 adaptation to have them on the island. I assume the writer's gonna have them get there with a plane in time. Otherwise, why even show them in the story? They wouldn't get to do much on the island, but at least they'd be there. Because Sonic alone came to the island, you'd be better off skipping pages and only reading it again when it looks like it's doing something new. It's completely out of character that the same guy who let Eggman talk to him after one time he rammed into him would not stop and let Sonic explain himself too. Him being evil from the start would have made more sense. There's nothing creative about this fight. After Knuckles stops fighting him to explain himself, Eggman sends swap bots after Sonic. At least that's different from the Fleetway adaptation this is reminding me of. Ugh, why does it go to Sally's point of view? I could have assumed his friends were worrying about him. You literally never needed to show any scenes from their points of view. Sally tells Tails not to worry, and they find Rotor hours later with an emerald locator that can let them locate the island. But they already know where it is. I thought he was going to show them a plane, like he has in Archie. So you'd think he would already have one. They had a plane in the Secret Scrolls episode. What a stupid walrus. How could he have not thought to have a plane already? He was incredibly awesome in these books so far. It cuts back to Sonic and at least explains that Knuckles is wondering if Eggman lied. Sonic spin dashes through these pathetic poor man swap bots. So there goes any chance of this accurately portraying what a Saiyan version of Sonic 3 would be like. Who knows what clever strategy you would have come up with to defeat them? Maybe you should have led them into a lake. That's not hard to come up with. Knuckles sees how quick Sonic can spin and figures out that Sonic didn't hit him with its full force when he hit him earlier. Then Knuckles should know better by now. Sonic explains things to Knuckles. Their fight's over, by the way. Sonic Underground had a way better fight between them. I guess Eggman's out of robots, as Sonic's able to fully explain to Knuckles. Also, Eggman can't stop him from talking, because then he'd give away to Knuckles that he's evil. A green flash fills the jungle, and both Sonic and Eggman vanish, with Sonic not being on the floating island anymore. Sonic sees a barren landscape around him covered in a green mist that blocks out the sky, and the narration describes him as seeing the bodies of his friends. This is pointless shock value. He had a vision of them getting shot by beams already. This writer shouldn't have been allowed to have one story per book, because they had to stretch it out to make it last every time. You can have new creative concepts in a shorter story. All more length does is make it more boring and forced. I just keep checking out of this story. No plot progression until he finally sees some emeralds. Sonic can't grab the emeralds because they're only an illusion. He falls down a mountain in front of Eggman. The narration talks as if both Sonic and Eggman were sent to the future, and not just Sonic. Why can't it just instantly cut to the other heroes using the island locator? Some worthless padding precedes that. Sally tells Rotor he did a nice job as usual, so that's nice. Boring predictable stuff happens after this. Why did Rotor use the invention more than once? He would have only used it at the spot Sonic was at. It goes back to Sonic's point of view with some more boring padding. Eggman somehow decides to waste his time making a gloating speech when it'd be smarter of him to just stay quiet and relentlessly try to attack him no matter what. Like in the games. Rotor's band of green light breaks through the mist and the two of them reappear next to Knuckles in the present. Sonic states the obvious, and the Band of Light makes an opening appear in the boulder which contains the emeralds. That is a way better way of hiding them than the games. If Knuckles had the Master Emerald hidden in a boulder, it never would have gotten stolen. The narration seriously says that Knuckles had not only never seen them before, but they were the only thing he was guarding, and not the Master Emerald. I would have been impressed by this, but I already saw this in Archie. Gee, maybe if the writer of the American manual didn't lie that he was only guarding the Chaos Emeralds to avoid spoiling the Master Emerald, we wouldn't have this happen. The blame should be dealt where it's due. It's not like it really matters at this point anyways, because this was before it was established out of complete nowhere that the Master Emerald neutralizes the Chaos Emeralds. So they're functionally no different than each other right now. Eggman runs towards the emeralds and inexplicably reveals his evil purposes for getting them. Eggman runs towards the emeralds and inexplicably reveals his evil purposes for getting them. So Knuckles glides into him and apologizes to Sonic for doubting him. You'd think Sonic would have also attacked Eggman, because he's faster and Eggman's his main enemy. But instead this is framed like he's preventing the bad future. That was a real AOSCH moment on Eggman's part. Also, just because Eggman proved he was evil doesn't really prove that Sonic has no ill intentions for the emeralds. He should still be suspicious. If you really want to stretch the meaning of ill intentions, Sonic wants to get rid of Eggman. And that could be whined about his murder. And even if he decides to brainwash him to being good instead, that would be seen as evil too. The island shakes as the emeralds arbitrarily send out a power surge. Rotor's invention can't absorb the energy that travels along its beam and goes dead with a shower of sparks. The tilting island sends everyone there falling in front of Sally, who yells that Sonic's hurt, and Eggman goes home because he's outnumbered. It sure is convenient that the island was close enough to the ground that the fall only hurt them enough to knock Sonic out for a few minutes and hurt his head. When I pictured the island as a little higher up than that. So they all had rings to protect them. But Sonic had less rings, so he got hurt. But still not the amount he should have. It's new that Knuckles left the island and met Sonic's friends after the Sonic 3 story. It's not an amazing concept though. Nothing is done with it. Sally says it's good to see Sonic's alright, and Tails states the obvious that all of his friends were worried. Sonic thanks Rotor and calls him Buddy, and Knuckles reveals out of nowhere that he's stuck in their dimension. I have to assume this means his island vanished back to the Special Zone. Sally says Knuckles could always stay with them, and Sonic says they'll help him get home. So I look forward to seeing him in the next book. Knuckles says that when he gets home, he'll use the emeralds to get rid of Eggman. Oh, so that means he'll never be written to reunite with the emeralds. Got it. The emeralds will never be used like they were in the games, and we're just there as some weird plot-convenient stones to introduce Knuckles. The story's over now, and it just has some padding narration until it gets there. This story by Michael Teitelbaum was a boring, unneeded Sonic 3 ripoff that doesn't show all of the levels, so it's not even really an adaptation, and confuses me by giving Sonic visions for no reason, and putting him and Eggman in a possible future where Eggman got to abuse the emeralds with a big ray gun. Why do you need the emeralds to make a big beam blasting ray gun? Rotor made that in Archie. And the Vision has his friends dead just for shock value, considering they get sent back to the present anyways. Most of what's new here is confusing. Eggman somehow decides to confess his evil intentions, which is framed as why Knuckles stops him from getting the emeralds, which he could do because he wasn't as competent as Game Eggman, who flew after the emeralds with an Eggmobile with a shock device. So that was lame. There's also loads of padding, because the Sad AM characters are in it, but don't ever get to set foot on the island in a Sonic 3 plot for the first time. The writer can't even get that one simple little thing right. The story drags out forever the whole time, being especially boring when it steals ideas from Sonic 3, when that was guaranteed to be a better experience because it's a better medium. I did love the new idea that Angel Island with the emeralds keeps going back and forth between the Special Zone, which is left unnamed. And that explains why Eggman hasn't found the emeralds in all his years ruling Mobius. So this is a lot more good care put into establishing Knuckles and the Chaos Emeralds than a certain continuation had. Where I just have to assume Eggman never found the floating island because it was always hidden in the clouds. The island's disappearance and Rotor's inexplicable lack of a plane gave him an excuse to fire an awesome blast of energy that released the emeralds and resolved the plot. Although that was unusually irresponsible because the blast could have easily taken out Sonic and Knuckles before they would have seen it coming. Knuckles had a good, if boring, personality with respectfully written formal dialogue. He has a serious personality like Kinese too, and isn't an insanely short-tempered person, and was able to consider that Eggman was lying, although too late to be believable. Again, it shows how dumb the plot point of him being tricked into fighting Sonic was, because if he was the type to inexplicably let the bad guy with evil-looking eyes explain himself, even though he was also the type to attack on sight, then he would have treated Sonic with the same leniency. So even if this was the first time I experienced that plot point, it would still be a bad story to me. It would have been better to scrap the first draft bullshit where he got tricked and simply have Eggman brainwash him or put a bomb on him, forcing him to fight Sonic, which would also make Eggman look competent without undermining Knuckles permanently. Or at least should not have Eggman meet Knuckles, because he stayed in a hovercraft that was too high for Knuckles to reach. He had no reason to exhaust himself walking on the island itself. And he hates nature, and is out of shape. If he was the type to have Snively hold down the fort, why didn't he leave Snively behind in the Secret Scrolls episode? Why did the tractor beam of Angel Island arbitrarily decide to send Eggman to it? I understand sending Sonic to it because it actually needed him, but it knew Eggman was evil. I guess it's because Eggman has an emerald radar, so that's a magical ability. So it only sends people to the island if they have magical abilities.